Could you see something happening as early as this weekend?
Kelly, I could. I think we're going to see something happen sooner rather than later. And I think there's three factors that the president is weighing in his decision when to start the strikes. I think number one, when he feels that the negotiations have no chance of bearing fruit. I think number two, when he is convinced that the force that he's assembled and postured offensively and defensively will be able to achieve his objectives at a sufficient level of risk. And I think the wild card is he's inclined to strike if he starts to see the protest bubble up. We've actually started to see that significantly increase in the last couple of days. But I think those three factors are the things that are going to drive the president to make a decision in the next few days.
And the big question, too, there is, can they be trusted? I know Secretary Rubio was saying not too long ago that he didn't really think a deal could even really be made here. So him waiting for that to happen, I mean, do you think that for folks at home also wondering, do you trust the Iranians to make this nuclear deal with the president?
Kelly, I don't think you should ever trust them, which is why robust verification needs to be a necessary step if we do make a deal. Right. But I actually think that for the Ayatollah to accept the nuclear deal and give up his program, it would essentially mean that he would be accepting the fact that their primary policy for the last 4.5 decades of building a nuclear weapon has been an utter failure for the Iranian people. I think he would rather face defeat than admit failure. And I think he is on a path to accept whatever it is that the United States is willing to throw at him.
I wanted to take a look at just how much military hardware is in the region right now. We were saying the likes of which we have not seen since 2003. I wanted to get your thoughts on, does this look like to you the U.S. preparing for a limited strike, as the president said there he is considering, or is this something that would be ready for some sort of more sustained campaign?
Kelly, I think that the president wants the options to pursue a sustained campaign, but I actually think he's starting to lean towards the limited strike option being a preferable option. And I think there's four primary reasons. Number one, I think it faces less retaliation from the Iranians. I think number two, that it might prompt follow-on negotiations in good faith that we haven't seen thus far. I think number three, it might actually prompt the protests to start bubbling from the bottom up. And then finally, I think it bolsters his credibility because he promised help is on the way six weeks ago. And I think starting limited strikes would be a down payment on that promise.
That was something I was going to ask him in the briefing today. You promised help was on the way. Is that still coming? And as you're saying, it's showing that with the military buildup and at least showing some sort of posturing there potentially. And you mentioned the potential retaliation. We know that Iran is threatening, quote, all bases, facilities, and assets as targets in response to whatever the U.S. may do. What would that look like, and what are they doing at those facilities to prepare for the worst?
Kelly, we assess that Iran probably still has about 1,000 ballistic missiles. That's a lot of threat to U.S. military installations. About 40,000 Americans are stationed in the region and could be at risk. That we have had 6 weeks to set up our defensive posture so that we could protect in the best possible way against the onslaught of those ballistic missiles. And I do think that part of that calculus in the mind of the president is there is some risk here. Anything we do risks American lives. And I think he is weighing that as a decision point of whether he starts these strikes.
We also know that in the briefing today, someone asked him about his message to the Iranian people. I wanted to play that, and then we'll talk a bit more on the other side.
They better negotiate a fair deal. You know, the people of Iran are a lot different than the leaders of Iran. And it's very, very sad situation. But 32,000 people were killed over a relatively short period of time.
So do you think that his potential for strikes is about the military targets, the nuclear facilities, or is it about regime change?
Kelly, you always start a military operation with the objective in mind, and we don't really know what the president's objective is here, but I'm pretty sure in the Situation Room he would have spelled out specifically what he's thinking about with respect to objectives, and that would allow them to tailor the military capability in response. But I do think the protesters are on his mind. He mentioned it today. 32,000 or so were slaughtered 6 weeks ago. Another tens of thousands have been detained. And I think the combination of taking out a regime that has been the biggest threat to the United States for the last 4.5 decades, plus a nuclear program and a ballistic missile program and a proxy network, would be a gold mine of success for the United States and President Trump.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.